more than 40 years, Players Limited has been synonymous with auto racing in Canada. The last 4 decades have been rich in memorable highlights as Canadian fans embrace the guiding principles of the Players Racing program. A racing icon makes up our first entry as Britain's Sterling Moss captured the Players 200 at Motorsport in 1961, the first international motorsport race staged in Canada.
Bienvenue au circuit pour la course Players Québec.
A few years later, in 1966, Players sponsored the first race in the history of the Can-Am Series at Le Circuit Mont-Tremblant. In 1967, Canada celebrated its centennial in style with the staging of the Players Grand Prix at Motorsport, the first Formula One race in Canada. The 1970s saw the birth of the Players Challenge Series, which introduced us to Formula Atlantic racing and gave us talented racers like Gilles Villeneuve, Bill Bragg, and Richard Spinard. Continuing its trend-setting role, Players joined General Motors in the mid-1980s in establishing the Players GM Motorsport Series. During the same time period, Players sponsored stock car races, and the Players name and logo was a common sight across the country. In 1990, Players delighted fans with the staging of the Players Mondial, featuring prototype cars at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Complementing its sponsorship of such major racing events as the Molson Indy in Toronto and Vancouver, the Formula One Grand Prix in Montreal, and Le Grand Prix de Trois-Rivières, Players turned its attention to helping up-and-coming Canadian drivers in their rise to the pinnacle of auto racing. The Players Driver Development Program was born. This multifaceted program, which went well beyond financial support to include physical and mental training, as well as testing and coaching, became a model in auto racing circles. At its peak, the program enabled drivers to earn their way to a seat within a 3-team structure in CART, Indy Lights, and Atlantic, and offered partial sponsorship in development series such as Formula 1600, Formula 2000, and Champ Car Lights. The program saw its first graduate, Jacques Villeneuve, take the racing world by storm. After winning Rookie of the Year honors at the Atlantic Series in 1993, Villeneuve repeated the feat the following year in CART and gave team Players its first victory with a masterful performance at Road America. His sophomore season was nothing short of spectacular. Not only did he become the first Canadian driver to win the Indy 500, but he also etched his name in the record books as the youngest car champion in history. Part of the dynamic duo on the Atlantic team that started it all, Claude Bourbonnais had a stellar year in 1993 with 7 wins and made a smooth transition to Indy Lights, taking the checkered flag in Vancouver in 1996. When Jacques Villeneuve parlayed his success in North America into a championship-winning ride with Williams Renault in Formula One, Team Players did not miss a beat. Indeed, Players had another ace in its deck in Greg Moore, who dominated the Indy Lights Championship in 1995 by winning 10 out of 12 races. Moore was 21 when he made the jump to the CART Series, but he showed the maturity and the speed of a seasoned veteran. He became the youngest race winner in history when he beat out Michael Andretti at the Milwaukee Mile in 1997. The Players Driver Development Program kicked into high gear in 1996 when 3 Players-sponsored drivers won their respective open-wheel championships. David Eppringham scored 3 race wins en route to the Indy Lights title, while Patrick Carpentier rewrote the record book at the Atlantic Series with 9 wins in 12 races. Meanwhile, Jean-François Veilleux showed his mettle in the National Formula 1600 Championship, winning 3 times and taking the overall title. Throughout the years, success on home soil was a frequent occurrence for players-drivers. It was especially true in the Atlantic race in Montreal, where Bertrand Godin, Lee Bentham, Alex Tagliani, and David Rutledge all stood on the top step of the podium between 1997 and 2000. Under the tutelage of Richard Spinard, many aspiring drivers got the opportunity to hone their skills in the development series. The list includes Andrew Bourdin, Jean-François Dumoulin, Rob McDonald, Marc-Antoine Camera, and Aaron Povolito. Since 1998, to stay within budget levels imposed by federal legislation, Team Players was forced to gradually cut back its sponsorship of events and teams. But its continued involvement in the Champ Car World Series gave Canadian fans plenty to cheer about. A week after Alex Tagliani clinched his first kart podium with a runner-up finish at the Toronto Indy in 2001, Patrick Carpentier's maiden victory at Michigan was a stunning achievement, as was the all-players front row later that year at the Vancouver Indy. In 2002, Carpentier became the King of Ohio with victories at Cleveland and Mid-Ohio, while finishing a career-best third in the championship standings. This season, Players enlisted Paul Tracy, Kart's active leader in wins, to team up with Patrick Carpentier in an ultimate effort to bring the Vanderbilt Cup back to Canada. It didn't take long for Tracy to make his presence felt. He won the first 3 races of the year, the first Champ Car driver in history to do so. As Team Players enters a crucial phase in its pursuit of a championship, it's fitting to remind ourselves what a great ride it's been, and that regardless of the final outcome, the quest for excellence is what has driven Team Players since 1961.